What are you doing, Eric?
Dental work. Hey, when the teeth fall out, you gotta put them back in.
Can you do any impressions?
No.
I feel like you've done some good impressions. Cartman?
Oh, nope. Not that I would ever do on camera. So some of that is like the vocals. Meaning, impressions are not acted for video. Any impression I've done it was probably just audibly.
So
No.
speaking of impressions, you know who can do a good impression of a madman?
Our buddy Tim Montana?
Yeah, so this is we're leading into the intro of Tim Montana. That dude, first of all, he's a country star, but also a rock star now because he flipped over to the rock world with Devil You Know, which I produced the music video, edited the music video, and Lindsay Marcy directed it. We should have her on the podcast. She's fascinating too.
Are you going to call out every single credential on this episode, on this podcast, do you think?
Of what I do?
Yeah. Does it make you feel, it makes you feel good? Is that what it is?
Yeah, all right. So The Devil You Know, shot in Montana. It's moving up the Billboard charts right now. He's got millions of views. Actually, I think that song just hit 1 million listens on Spotify. He's an influencer.
Yeah.
His biggest credit to date is that he gave me a Traeger.
Oh, that's nice. It must be nice.
Yes.
Well, he gave you a Traeger because he's a spokesperson for Traeger.
Well, yeah,
right?
he's an influencer for Traeger.
Yeah.
He's also an influencer for Raven Crossbows and Black Rifle Coffee.
He's a good dude. I got to hang out with him a little bit. I got to meet him, hang out with him on the tour bus and stuff, and just a really fun guy to be around. Just crazy.
All right, do you want to throw to Mr. Tim Montana?
Yeah. So here's the episode with Tim. Ebb and flow. Here we go.
Here is someone's in the lobby. Michael's in the lobby. Let's see who this is. Look at this
Michael.
gentleman. Who is Michael?
Oh no.
So you brought your A game today, Tim.
Wow, why does it say Michael?
Do you think this might be your OnlyFans name?
Quite possible.
I love it. Welcome, Tim Montana. Thanks for finally joining us.
Oh God, I thought we were going to do it a month ago, but Rick's all mousy. Like I don't want to ask him twice. I'm like, you have to beat me over the head with a bat. Just be like, just tell me we're getting on at 6 today. And I'll be like, fine.
All I know is I had multiple time frames where I was like, we're doing it with Tim. And then I was like, where's Tim? And he's like, Tim didn't show. That's what I know.
He was too busy being a rock star.
No show, Michael.
No show, Michael. There it is. We'll blame it on Michael Ray.
Do I change my name? Do I need to change it?
No, it doesn't matter. No one's going to see it. Wait, so this is where you do all your performances, like when you're on all these shows and doing your performances, but you don't have a light for...
I had a ring light, but I also have a teenager, so...
Oh, there you go.
Her OnlyFans is popping. I'm just kidding.
Oh, my God.
She went on the road with me this weekend and said, like, I heard girls make a lot of money with just feet pics. And she's like, she was kind of kidding, but she's like, what if I just did feet pics? And I'm like, you are 15. If I even see you remotely Googling something that rhymes with OnlyFans, Googling only cans and posting feet pics.
Do you think that if you saw a picture of your daughter's foot, you would know it was her?
No, I couldn't identify it at all.
So then she's in the clear. How is she ever going to get caught?
Wow.
True, yeah. I always, whenever I go to school, it's funny. They're like, I'll go check the kids in late. And they're like, what grade's your kid in? And I'm like, and they're like, teacher name. And I'm like, ooh. I'm that dad. I'm here sometimes. I'm like, third high school?
So I've actually been to school while you're dropping your kids off, and So here's the kind of surreal thing about your life, and we'll get into your life in a second here. So that day, correct me if I'm wrong, that day we had the thing with Colby Calais in the morning. We shot with her and you. Or no, I'm sorry. It was school in the morning. Then we went to Colby Calais' house. And then later that day, we did the stuff with Michael Ray and Billy Gibbons, all at your house.
Right.
And I was thinking to myself, like, as we're sitting there, you were like the normalest father ever, just dropping your kid off. And I'm like, the day that we have in store, most people don't get to live like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no question there. I was telling you how impressed I was.
Good story. Thanks for name dropping. That was fun for everyone.
It was all about name dropping there.
Watch your toes.
So, Tim, what's behind you? What's this room you're in right now? I see lots of guitar.
Well, and by the way, I'll do some of the stuff that we shot there. I'll show some of that. So
that is the Charlie Sheen couch from the back of the bus, the red couch back there. When I bought his bus and put the bunks in, I removed it, and I was like, I definitely need the blowjob couch. When I did say it, I told Charlie because it was an organ, and I had to drive it back. So I'm like, hey, should I, put this up in my mom's place for our little lodge, or should I put it in my rehearsal studio at home? And he goes, yeah, that couch is not really a mom's place kind of thing.
Yikes.
I was like, that's all he said about it. I named it the blowjob couch. I don't know, but he said don't put it at your mom's house.
It was implied.
Yeah, I'm assuming if it was in the back of his bus that it was that.
So this is a great place to start because we can show the video of you actually buying the RV, but let's start with how you first met Charlie.
Rob O'Neill. Rob O'Neill is the SEAL Team 6 veteran that shot Osama bin Laden.
By the way, did you see that comedy thing he did with, I want to say, Jeff Ross, maybe? Mm-mm. Did you see that where they were in his ear?
Oh, yeah, that was really good. And they said something at the end that I was like, I cringed. I'm like, Jesus.
I cringed too.
What was it? It was something about 9/11, and I was like, well, maybe not joke about 9/11.
Anyway, so go on to the Charlie Sheen show.
God, Rick, unbelievable. Yeah, so Rob O'Neill's from my hometown in Butte. His brother's the first person to ever play me on the radio in Butte, Montana when I'm 18, 19, something like that. And so I end up eventually meeting Rob, and Rob's just coming out with his story of, firing the shots that killed bin Laden. It becomes national news, and in an interview somewhere, he said he watched the movie Navy SEALs and was inspired to join the Navy, which I've actually found a lot of Navy SEALs of that era, guys in their 40s, joined the Navy because of the Charlie Sheen film Navy SEALs. Yeah. He recruited a lot of people. But so, of course, Charlie's like, wait a minute, I had something to do with killing the worst terrorist ever. So he called Rob. They ended up meeting in Los Angeles for dinner. And, of course, Rob is telling him about my music and plays him Hillbilly Rich. And then I wake up to a tweet. And next thing I know, I'm flying to Los Angeles to spend the day with Charlie Sheen and Billy Gibbons, who was my ride-along for the day. So we ended up kicking it, and I think I told him about Mostly Stone and, asked if he'd direct it. He had never directed before, but I'm like, man, you've been on sets your entire life and career. Like, you can figure it out. So he wrote the script and came out and made the video happen, and we've been buddies ever since. He's coming over here in May to have a little barbecue with me after we do a little reenactment of Red Dawn at the City Winery.
Is he going to be in that?
Yes. Yep. So
That's
we're gonna.
Awesome. Can you talk about that? Like what you're doing?
Yeah. I met C. Thomas Howell, Pony Boy from The Outsiders. He's an ET, and he moved to Nashville, and he's got a residency at City Winery. So Charlie introduced him and I, and he came over to the house. We kicked it off. My daughter was actually impressed with that one because she loves the movie The Outsiders. She's like, oh, my God, Pony Boy's at our house right now. So anyway, C. Thomas Howell is this residency. He's got the cast of E.T. coming. It's going to be like a variety show, like skits, music, Q&A. And so he's got the E.T. cast coming. He's got the Stranger Things cast coming. And pretty big names. I'm like, wow, coming to the City Winery. So then he's going to do a Charlie Sheen night, but it's going to be based around Red Dawn because he was in Red Dawn. I think it's Darren Dalton. Is that it? Darren Dalton? Is that a name? Darren Dalton. He was one of the guys in Red Dawn as well. And so they said, come down, play mostly Stone, and hey, would you reenact a couple scenes with us? You can play Patrick Swayze. And I'm like, only me gets strange calls like that. Like, I get to reenact some Red Dawn scenes with the exact guys from Red Dawn. So, yeah.
As Patrick Swayze.
Red Dawn was one of my favorite movies of all time growing up. And when he has to, spoiler, when he has to kill his friend for being a traitor was one of the, to this day, is one of the most heartbreaking things ever filmed.
Yeah, I need to watch it like 20 times because I asked him, I said, what scene am I going to do so I can learn my lines? And he goes, I'm just going to give you a sheet of paper. That's what's going to make it fun, and you're going to roll with it. And I was like, oh,
Nice.
shit. I better brush up on it. So, gotta make Patrick proud.
I have two things. One, Billy Gibbons for Rick's mom. What's the 10-second version of Who's Billy Gibbons?
Who's Billy Gibbons?
Is the front man of the iconic trio from Texas known as ZZ Top. Longest running band in rock and roll history to have the same lineup, meaning same band members for 50 plus years. So that's never been done before. And became a really good friend of mine, business partner, guitar aficionado, guitar legend, arguably one of the best guitar players out there, up there with Stevie Ray and Jimi Hendrix. And yeah, became a great friend, business partner. I'd venture to say one of my best friends out there, and just good dude, man.
And we know about it. We've obviously seen it. Business partner wise, what are you doing with Billy?
OnlyFans. I'm just kidding. Maybe, like, there's a big beard fetish thing. I'm just kidding. We have a company called Whisker Bomb Original Foods. So we produce pepper sauces, salsas, barbecue sauces. Hopefully these pork rinds will be coming out soon. And check out more at whiskerbomb.com. It rhymes. So
It's some fantastic photography on that last round.
God, it's just beautiful, ain't it?
It's beautiful, beautiful.
Tim, you just mentioned a while ago, but kind of skipped over your music being played for the first time on the radio.
Yeah.
What's the lead?
Wait, let me jump in. Let me jump in here. Shut up, Eric. So, Tim, go back because you have had an amazing life, and I want to get to the point of music making and that you were on Letterman and then, where you are today. But let's start with the very beginning. A young Tim growing up in Montana.
Yeah, I was born in the Flathead Valley after my mom and biological father had to flee the state of Idaho because my biological father was a crazy person. And I think their trailer house was blown up, I believe, by a white supremacist group, I believe. And we're actually going to start writing a book, my brother and I, because the history is so bizarre but real. And ended up in Kalispell, and then mom got divorced from him. Then he kidnapped me. I was abducted. I was a missing child for a while, and he kept me locked up in a house in Spokane. They finally got him. I went to foster care for a while. It was probably about the time I was 5, and then my mom showed up with a new boyfriend that she intended to marry, who was kind of off the grid, militia-ish type fella, and not a very good person. But we ended up going off grid after I got, out of the foster care situation and back with my mom. And so then from the time I was 5 or 6 till I was 18, we lived off the grid in the mountains of Montana, lanterns, candles, outhouse. Just, I wasn't allowed to go out, really wasn't allowed to have friends, talk on the phone. So I just would work 24/7. And
that was way before going off grid was cool.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And everyone's like, were you guys like hippies? And I'm like, not really. I mean, we planted. If Barry and AK-47s could sprout, plants, maybe. If you plant an SKS, an AK-47 will grow.
How did music play into all of this?
I got a guitar when I was 5 or 6. So hey, TV's gone, no more television, no more electricity. Here's a lantern for your room and an acoustic guitar. So I just kind of kept myself company because I didn't have friends. And I have 5 siblings, but they're all were grown up. They're all a lot older than I am, so they didn't really experience that part of mom's life when she was married to that fellow that I don't speak of very much. But he wasn't really good to us. He was really abusive. And, I mean, the whole, when I say working, and I try to describe this to my kids, it was constant. If I'd accomplished the job, then it would be another job. I wouldn't get rewarded for accomplishing the job. I would get more work. And so I was like, wow. But I mean, when I was 6, 7 years old, there'd be 6 cord of firewood to cut, and they'd just hand me an axe. And I look at my 6 or 7 year old now, I'm like, I don't even know that he could pick up the axe But I would have to split 6 or 7 cord of firewood for the winter and dig outhouse holes and build jackleg fence and just like, and I look back and I'm like, I don't know how I did all that shit at that young of an age. And then in the midst of it, I'd the whole time be getting yelled at and terrified that I was going to get smacked around if I didn't do a good enough job. And I'm like trying to straighten boards and, or logs. And, the jackleg fence in Montana, I think Rick's seen it. It's still there, still standing. I built that one when I was probably 16, and it's got to be a quarter mile that I did up this mountain and down. And I logged all the timber, hauled it out, would take all the branches off, make my cuts to do the jacks and the jack legs, and then do about 15-foot pieces of lodge pole that I would cut and put that together and go section. And that took like, God, I want to say like 6-7 months or maybe a summer. I can't remember, but it's still standing there. Every time I drive by it, I just think about like, wow. And everybody else is in town going on dates, and I'm just like felt like I was a slave,
Yeah.
So it was pretty rough. That person's not in our life anymore, but I don't know. I feel like I got a lot of work ethic, and sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, because I have pretty high expectations of what I know humans are capable of. And when I see lazy people around me, it drives me nuts. But then I realize that being raised the way I was, I might have a not normal idea of what hard work is, So I try not to be an asshole to people, but like when I'm working with somebody, I was always the guy like, if you show up to a job site, get busy now. Don't wait for anyone to tell you what to do. Get busy, right? And that was my thing when I was a kid, 'cause if I didn't get busy, I'd get my ass whipped. So I'm like used to that of like, if I show up, and to this day, I'll still help sound guys in and out. If I see somebody working, I jump in. It's just part of that, childhood thing of like, get to work or get that ass whooped. So.
Well, I'll say this too. On set, you're the same way. Like, you're the only person I've ever worked with where we're doing a video for you where you're like, all right, let me move the camera, let me move a light, or let me help you guys take the stuff downstairs. And right. In our world, that doesn't happen. You're like, first of all, we don't want you to get hurt. That's number one. Number two is that like you need to be in your headspace. Let us do the moving things and setting up things. So it took us a while to go, oh yeah, Tim's here to work. Like, not just be in front of the camera, but also be behind it.
Yeah, I can't really sit around and watch people work. And I've been to some places that are union music halls where the guys have to carry your stuff, and I'm just like, this is weird.
Yeah.
I got good stuff out of it. I mean, I just live by that philosophy of no one's going to outwork me, and I know that's got around Nashville. A lot of people call me the hardest working man in Nashville, and I'll take it.
So when you referenced getting your guitar when you were 5 years old, how did you self-taught? Somebody else knew how, taught you? Like how? So initially at that age,
I self-taught myself and realized that I had an ear. I could hear something on the radio and figure out how to play it to an extent. Wow. And then I learned chords by myself. And then there was my brother's blind, and my mom was an interpreter for the deaf, so I spent a lot of time with deaf people and blind people and special needs, and would go work with her on that stuff. And I met a blind guitar player named Floyd in Kalispell, Montana, that would go to his place, and he was a blind guy. I mean, the place was totally a wreck, and he was like, shirt off, greasy hair, walking into stuff, and I'd help him get around and find his guitars, and he, kind of took my guitar playing to another level. It was probably a year I worked with Floyd. I don't even know if he's still alive. I know he was on dialysis and was in kind of like kidney failure or something like that when I was 10 years old, so I'm assuming he's passed on since. But I remember we brought him to a dinner, like we took him to Red Lobster, my mom and I, and the funniest thing, who was the other, was it Mozart or Bach that was deaf? There was some famous
Mozart.
Was it Mozart?
Yeah.
Might have. Anyway,
I don't know, but I said it with confidence, so it's got to be true.
Right. He told me this story about how Mozart was like really messy with food and would throw food around. And we took him to Red Lobster, and this fucker did the same thing. He'd like take a bite of something and just lob it. I'm like a shrimp tail goes flying. And I remember being a little kid like, I just landed in a lady's hair. But I trained with him for a while, and for the most part, self-taught. Like I said, then I discovered Nirvana, and I became a freak and learned every Nirvana song under the sun. And then ultimately, when I was 18, I had military recruiters. 17, I had military recruiters come into the house like crazy, because that was for the work shit I went through. And I'd run in combat boots and knew how to shoot guns and break guns down. I learned a lot about weapons at a very young age. Then I found a music school in Los Angeles called Musicians Institute. And so my mom begged me to send it a tape because she did not want me to go in the military because I was gung-ho and I had the Marine Corps guy, the Army guy, everybody coming up to the house for like barbecues. And so then I got accepted. How do I put this thing on Do Not Disturb? I got accepted to music school. And then just went and did that in Los Angeles. And me going from that life off-grid Montana to LA was like setting a fucking monster loose on the big city because I had a lot of catching up to do on really dangerous and wild behavior.
Yeah.
My childhood started at 18, and I can't believe I'm still alive.
Well, me neither after some of the stuff I've seen you do. Your mom has the coolest wedding video of all time.
Yeah, guys. It's Mom's 4th wedding. Made these laminates that say Mom only gets married a 4th time once. She's real pissed off about that. It's going to be a wild ass time.
Mama got married for the 4th time again. Yeah, she got married 2 summers ago, and we filmed a music video, American Dream. And it's a very real song, and it's a very real video where Rick and the boys showed up and filmed this video at my mom's house. And
by the way, it was Beethoven.
Beethoven.
But I said it with such confidence. He gave me a multiple choice. Tim, we're going to jump around because I think what you said about learning what does that say?
That is a Mint 400 first place trophy I just got.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Someone put together that video. Look good.
Sorry.
So
can we do this call later?
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of OnlyFans, there's got to be.
Feet, and I do a trophy, OnlyFans with feet in it. You like winning in feet?
So, Jesus Christ, Tim, you said you learned every Nirvana song. Talk about the first time that you met your boy Dave Grohl.
Woo! Oh, I earned that.
All right, Dave Grohl. We're moving on to Dave Grohl.
Well, I just when he asked what song you guys should play together.
Yeah. So I play. I'm a ambassador for Traeger Grills, and just signed my 5th year, I think. So I'm a pretty good ambassador.
Congrats.
Thank you. And they had me play Memphis in May. They have a big barbecue thing down there, and they had the Traeger tent. And I'd heard rumors Dave Grohl was there cooking, so I told my drummer on the way there, I said, dude, what if he shows up, and what if he jams with us, and what if he loves us, and we, get to work with Dave Grohl? And my drummer paused and said, at this point, I'm going to believe you because I've heard you kind of manifest your own destiny several times, and I've watched it unfold exactly how you described it before it happened, which I have done on multiple occasions through my life. And I don't know how, why, but sure as shit, I'm playing acoustic, and up I see a guy with his ball cap down like this, a cigarette, and he's got Chucks on, and I'm like, that is a David Grohl right there. And he says, what is that drum you guys are playing? It's a cajon my drummer is sitting on. I said, it's a cajon. And he goes, no way, can I play it? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, well, what do you want to play? And I said, Smells Like Teen Spirit. And he goes, go fuck yourself. And I was like, okay. And I was like, House of the Rising Sun, one of the songs my mom made me learn when I was a kid. And he goes, yeah. So we did House of the Rising Sun. If you go on YouTube, there's a video of him and I jamming. And then he got up, screamed about his hands, and he said, walk the river and tell me about your life. And I had waited my whole life to have a guy from Nirvana come up to me. I mean, there's not many. There's Chris and Dave and Consider Pat. But anyway, so I walked the river and told him my whole story. Well, people kept running up and doing selfies, and I was really good at deflecting and kind of getting him in and out. And he'd do the selfie, of course, but I'd keep him moving. He's like, dude, you're good at like this, handling stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I work with Billy Gibbons a lot, and just know I'm a bigger guy, so everybody kind of assumes I'm security. So yeah, so he goes, man, he's like, we got to stay buddies. I got to text at 4 a.m. That night after I'd passed out, and it said something like, there's not a lot of rebels left in this business. We got to stick together. So then all of a sudden, shortly thereafter, he's like, hey, come to Madison Square Gardens. I want you to see the Foo Fighters. And we show up, get backstage passes. My wife out drinks the whole band with her beer bong.
And there's a photo of it.
Oh, Hank, wait.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
There's Dave yelling. Wait, is this? There's Davey. That was like Andy or Adam Devine in the background screaming as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Mozart, Bach, whatever his name is. You know,
Whatever.
the deaf guy with the foot OnlyFans page.
Yeah. So the only reason we wanted you on here is to talk about your wife. She is awesome.
She just yelled at me. Don't stroke her ego.
Oh yeah. There's not, like, you have a massive personality, and it's interesting because I don't know what we can show from the stuff that we filmed together for the TV show that we're trying to get. So I'll kind of intersperse some stuff in here, but she holds her own against you, and that is a hard thing to do.
I know. I got to take her down.
Yeah, take her down a peg.
No, she's awesome. We met 17 years ago, been married 16 years, have 4 beautiful kids, and she has put up. Some of the shit I did when I was younger, I can't believe she put up with me. She married me when I was 23. She's 6 or 7 years older than me. The older the pan, the better the cooking. That's what I say, but marrying a 23-year-old version of myself, I look back like one of our first dates, I just destroyed her rental car by plowing through garbage cans and sending them over fences and backed into a light pole. And of course, I did it all on purpose. I was just like, yeah, I love rental cars, love trashing them. And then, she ended up turning it in and never got caught because it was like a dark garage. And then she's going through the airport having an anxiety attack. One of the guys from the rental car company is like, miss, and she turns around like, oh my God, and he goes, you forgot your cell phone charger. Thanks for renting with us.
Wow.
So right? Like all this crazy stuff. And I used to just get in fights at bars all the time. And she would be right there. I remember one day I was too drunk and this guy smaller than me was swinging on me. And every time I'd swing, I'd miss. And then he'd punch me twice in the face. And she got so sick of watching me get punched by this dude. And he was talking shit. He had it coming. But she just came in there and just started pat, kicking this dude's ass. And she was so mad at me that I was losing the fight that she jumped in and beat him up. So I knew that's the kind of girl you want to marry.
And she's like corporate America now. She's like successful corporate America.
Yeah, VP of sales for a major candy company. So, yeah, she does good, works her butt off. And, she grew up poor as well. So both of us just kind of have this work ethic that's pretty wild. So,
I was gonna say, how many cars do you think you've wrecked in your lifetime?
Oh, my God. Yeah, I wrecked a lot of off-road vehicles. Just this last week at this corporate event I did with Kobe Calais, the guy there that put it on was like, this guy took these veterans hunting, and he goes, and there's this mountain, right, that he's like, I wouldn't take my truck up in four-wheel drive because there's a cliff on one side, and it's like a good half mile to the top of the mountain, and it's muddy, and it's rocky, and he's like, again, would not take a four-wheel drive truck up it. It is a Polaris-only trail. And he goes, Tim hit it with a Chrysler 300, and I hit the bottom of that hill like 75 miles an hour, and that car was just like airborne and smashing and like inches away from rolling down a cliff that probably would have killed us. And it was so hot because I was roasting this front-wheel drive Chrysler 300. It was so hot when I finally made it, and everyone's minds were blown when they were at the top of the hill in the Polaris. I pull on this grass, and the car goes poof and catches on fire because the engine and transmission was so hot underneath that the grass caught fire. And so now everybody's screaming, it's going to explode. And my buddy's like, dude, you roll the window down and the car is just filled with smoke and you're just gagging while you're spinning the tires, and finally drove out of it.
Oh, my God.
And we returned the car.
100's the answer.
We returned the car and nobody said anything again.
Sir, you forgot your charger.
Oh, my bad. I burned up the entire... There was another one. Listen to this one. I wasn't driving the car, but a buddy of mine I had to be 25. He missed my birthday party. He was my best buddy, Brian, and because he got a new girlfriend, so he decides to blow off my birthday party, and I took that as an act of aggression. So I went to his house, and I'd buy the mortar shells, the fireworks to shoot in the air, and I'd throw the tube away, because I call them ground bombs, because you throw them and they just go boom, and colors blow out of your lawn. And it's very dangerous. So I light one and lob it out of the truck and leave. And the next morning I get a call from him. He goes, dude, I woke up this morning. all my backyard caught fire. He goes, all my bushes are gone. And he goes, and Jenny's car caught on fire, and it melted all the paint off her brand new Honda because it was parked on a dry pile of leaves. And I'm like, I have a very guilty conscience, and I'm a very honest person. So I said, Brian, I threw a firework that likely caught your entire backyard on fire. And so he came over. We almost got in this fist fight, but he's like screaming like, oh, and I'm like, dude, I'll get it taken care of. The guy that was with me runs a body shop or didn't run it. He worked at a body shop. And so my buddy Brent goes to work the next day and says, hey, my buddy Tim lobbed this firework at my buddy's house and caught the car on fire, melted all the stuff. And the guy was laughing so hard, he said, tell Tim we'll fix it for free. That's some funny shit. So the dude fixes it for free, but he sends me pictures of this heat shield that covers a fuel line, and the heat shield had melted and almost melted the fuel line. And he sent me a photo, and he's like, I don't know if you're a religious man, but if that would have melted any further, that car would have exploded.
Dude, this goes back to, like, even you just in a car. Like, the music video with Charlie Sheen. You almost die on that music video.
Yeah, I crashed the car from Navy SEALs. We went off an embankment and almost rolled it on top of myself.
Yeah, well, I'll show the video of it, but how did that come about?
So Eddie Braun is the stunt man, always has been the stunt double for Charlie Sheen, from Navy SEALs to Major League. He laughs and says Charlie can't run and make it look cool, so he did all the running from base to base. So Charlie, I said that. Eddie said that. So Eddie says, I'm going to bring the car from Navy SEALs, and Charlie knew about it, and it was this big surprise that they brought the exact car that I grew up watching, because when we'd start the generator when I was a kid, I'd watch Navy SEALs like religiously on VHS after I was done vacuuming and cleaning the trailer out, amongst my other chores. I was a very busy kid. It's tough being a slave in Montana when you're a kid, you know? Anyway, so brings the car, Eddie rigs up GoPros to the front bumper to drive it while he's laying across the floorboards on the front with a black blanket over him so that you see the car driving, but there's no driver, and he's steering with the back of his hand. So he's got his hand up here or up this way, and he's doing the controls with his other hand, like the brake and gas. And he's a stuntman in Hollywood. He does huge movies. He had that big documentary on Disney called The Stuntman that The Rock is a producer on. It's a really cool documentary if you haven't seen it. He jumped Snake River Canyon in a rocket to redo Evel Knievel stuff. Anyway, so he's like, this is great. I'll lay here. I have an iPad to connect to the GoPro to see where the car's going, and I'll steer here, and Tim, sit on a pillow in the back. Don't put a seatbelt on because you need to look big, and the drone will shoot overhead while you look into the drone with your sunglasses and say, I'm mostly stoned as this car is just meandering down this 2-lane highway. That's all good and well until afterwards, after the crash, we realize there's like a 3 or 4 second lag time between what he's seen on the iPad screen and what the GoPro is capturing.
And you're in a convertible. We'll show it obviously, but Eric, it's a convertible, him looking up in the back seat. And this thing.
I saw the behind the scenes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So of course that's a perfectly flat like field with a little downhill, except for this one spot where there's a culvert, maybe a 6-foot ditch, 8-foot ditch that's concrete, and that's where he drove off. And I remember yelling, "I'm mostly left, turn left." And you see me like try to bail, but the way the car was going, all that energy coming this way, I don't think I would have made it out because my torso was like a quarter of the way out as I'm trying to just, with everything I could muster, bail out of the side of that car onto the asphalt before it rolls over on top of me. And Rob O'Neill was there watching on the camera with the guys, and he said he was like, oh my God. And I came back and I'm like, man, I almost got hurt. And Rob, being the Navy SEAL, has done 400 missions, is like, I watched that in real time, and let's not play around here. You almost died. If that thing would have gone over, you would have been squished under the car. And I was like ghost white pale. Then the sheriff shows up because he got a call from this crazy old lady, and we may have illegally shut down the road with a Marine Corps friend of mine. He was sitting up there with his truck, and he's like, Tim, the cops are here, and they apparently said I can't just close a public road with my pickup. And the cop got a call from this old lady, apparently that calls all the time, and she said there was a red convertible driving itself. So for once, she wasn't wrong. And And the sheriff gets there, and I'm out. I'm ghost white pale. My heart is going a million miles an hour, not because of the cop, but because I almost died. And the cop looks down, and gas is just pouring out of this car because it's sitting like this. Now the fuel is just dumping out into this culvert. And the cop is like, well, what are y'all going to do? What the hell? Blah, blah. And then he just like mumbles a bunch of Southern shit and then looks up and goes, is that Charlie Sheen? The producer is like, we need to leave now. So some rednecks dudes just came out of that field with a tractor. They saw the crash and just hooked onto that car. I don't know how they did it. I left, but they just hooked onto the car and got it out.
That's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. How many times, rough estimate, how many times do you think you've almost died?
God, I don't know. I mean,
because in this conversation, I think we've already covered at least 3,
yeah.
Which means it's got to be 50 plus.
Probably. I
plus?
was gonna say probably 50. That if I sat down and really thought about it, like yeah, quite a few times. But I like to have fun. I like to do cool shit.
So Tim. How do you describe your music, first of all?
I don't genre identify, and don't you try to tell me what I am.
I will not. An entertainer. I will say this about you. There's this whole thing. Do you remember Tenacious D? Did you ever watch the HBO show?
Oh, yeah.
So his whole thing is like, whether there's 2 people in the crowd or 100,000, we're going to rock the same. And I will say you do the same. I've seen you around a campfire rock the same as when you're in the like these massive audiences and stuff. So yeah. I respect the shit out of that. But so the whole point of this show is, what's the moment that kind of defines that brought you here to this day? And then we're going to totally interrupt you as you tell it. So have you thought about that? Like, what's something that led you, like one moment that kind of led you to this point?
I mean, what do you mean this point? Like career-wise, life-wise?
Yeah. Well, let's start with career-wise, and then we can dive into personal stuff.
I think getting into music school gave me that extra oomph. Like, I definitely would have been in the military if I didn't go to music school, and Lord knows what would have happened if I went in the military. Who knows? If I would have played music but getting into music school was like, oh, maybe I'm like really good at this. And then I got there and I kind of realized that everybody there were some people that were really good and some people that were really bad. And I'm like, oh, if you can afford the school, they'll accept you. So defining moment would be music school for sure, to kind of give me that extra oomph to go do music. And then when I was in Hollywood, I just met a bunch of people, connected, and yeah, I think that.
When you were at school, were you writing your own stuff?
Yeah, a little bit, but I wasn't going to theory class or music reading. And in my brief break from school, I got in a horrible Harley Davidson accident where I broke the windshield with my head, tore my ACL, butterfly fractures on my leg, and my bone.
Wait, you have a torn ACL?
Yeah.
So both Eric and I have had that. How do you jump around like you do? Like your knees, like I would never have guessed you had knee problems.
I never got the surgery either, so
Me neither.
Yeah, I never got the surgery, so I'm just kind of waiting for it to go out one of these days. But, they crunch pretty good. But, yeah, the way I was hit was pretty miraculous. I didn't have a helmet. I was taking a break from GIT. I went for the year, and then I came home for the summer to get my old drummer back to move back to Hollywood. And I brought my bass player with me. We rode a Greyhound bus up, and that's a whole other story in itself. I almost got kicked off. And so I get to Montana. I've got my Harley. I fired up. No helmet law there, so I got my leathers on thinking I'm badass, sitting at a stoplight, and a lady has a diabetic seizure 2 blocks behind me, and I have no idea that this car is coming like a missile for my motorcycle. And she hit me, thank God, kind of angled where it spun me to the left, but it crushed my leg, and then my head went backwards into her windshield. And I have the video of that, too. I had it transferred over to not the actual impact, but the news showed up because it was such a gnarly accident. There were several cars involved, and they thought I died. So it spun me sideways. I broke the windshield. You can see the bubble of my head and my ass. And then I went up over the car and then woke up and all the cars are gone. I remember waking up being like, what the hell's going on? And I stood up, and that's when my pant leg was completely torn off from the knee down. And the bone came out into my boot and my ankle. And that's when I collapsed and did this, like drug myself out of the middle of the road. And then everyone gathers around. There's photos, or in the video, you see people like holding my hand and praying because everyone that saw the accident was convinced I died. Because there's no way I'd hit that hard with my head and live. And ended up getting in the ambulance. They take me up. It's torn ACL, a bunch of broken bones in my leg. But as I'm leaving, I'm like, back of my head hurts. And the doctor's like, ooh. And he rolls me over and just starts picking glass out of my scalp.
Oh, jeez.
It was pretty gnarly, man. And I went to a party in Butte, Montana, like a week or two later on my crutches, and I went in and one of the girls almost fainted because she couldn't. She was next to me and saw the impact, and she was like, "I can't be around you. That's weird." So there was another time.
Jesus.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Chalk that up.
Yeah. We need a counter as we work our way through the podcast of wrecked vehicles and almost died.
Right. And then I went back to LA with my drummer from high school who made it about a week in Hollywood where he's like, you guys are fucked up, and he left.
So Tim, what was the first time you went on stage with your own material?
High school talent shows. I'd say in 7th grade, I did the pep rally for the basketball team, and I played "Smells Like Teen Spirit" in Sweet Home Alabama, and then I started performing at the talent shows in high school. And before one of those talent shows, I was kicked out of my own band because the bass player decided that he was going to be the lead singer. And he hired a bass player that was a bigger kid than me, and they shoved me down in this lawn as my mom's dropping me off, and they were gonna beat me up. And they're like, "You're out of the band, loser." And I was like, "Oh!" And I didn't have any equipment or money for equipment, so then I decided I was gonna fuck those guys up at the talent show. I'm like, they're not gonna beat me. I'm gonna do it by myself. So I put together a little band of misfits, and ultimately we got first place, and then I backed up a girl, Amanda Garcia, on guitar, and we did a Sheryl Crow song, and she got second. So I was like, ha,
Nice.
smell you later, nerds.
Let's get those bullies on, and we'll have a reunion.
Oh, I fought the guy again when I was 25.
I bet.
Yeah, I took care of business on that one. I was like, 'cause I was Danielle was pregnant. Danielle was pregnant. We're at a bar in Butte, and we're playing pool, and I'm like, oh, everything's good. I don't think I'm a violent guy. I just don't like to get picked on. At some point in my life, I realized I'm never getting picked on again, ever. And I came from a whole childhood of that shit, and I was just like, no more bullies around me, please. So I do not like bullies. So we're playing pool, everything's good. Danielle's pregnant with Savannah. Danielle's probably 8 months pregnant. She had a big old gut. And then he says something about me stealing a Christmas song, and then he's poking me in the chest, and I remember telling myself, don't get in a fight. Just let him do it. This has been going on for 15 years now, whatever. And I was like, okay, if my back hits the wall, I'm just going to do a headbutt, because if I bonk him in the head, maybe that'll be better than punching someone. And my back hits the wall, and I go to do a headbutt, and his nose is up, and his nose just explodes, and it just became this. I'm like, oh, God. It just went from 0 to really violent. Then the bartender came to jump in and fight me, and my wife comes out of nowhere with that baby gut, just bonk, just gets him with the baby, and is like, don't you touch him, you son of a bitch. And then we went home, and I slept with a sword in the cabin because our cabin door doesn't lock, and everybody knows where my mom lives. So I was convinced he was going to come up there and try to kill me, so I had a sword.
Your life, I mean, look, we've talked about this TV show for a while, and we're actively pursuing it. But you need a documentary. We're talking about doing a reality show on your life, but you need to even your family is interesting as all hell.
Yeah.
Your brother's super smart. Your sisters, they're in the video.
Yeah. Francie and Mary, everybody did good. We all kind of had none of us have the same last names. We have different dads. Well, a couple of them do. But my oldest brother that went through, he saw it all. He's the wisest one. He's 20 years older than me, and he's a PhD virologist for the FDA and just super smart. And then my brother Dustin is, several U.S. patents in telephony and worked for Lucent and Avaya and does voice to text stuff and has patents in that world. And then my brother David got a master's degree overseas and is an economist for the Department of Agriculture. My sister Francie became an environmental engineer in Anchorage. Everybody said, I want to figure out okay, how did we all have shitty dads that somehow made it, and it has to be, my mom.
Yeah.
He knows how to pick a winner.
So, Tim, has there been a point, any particular point along the way in your career here that you felt like I've made it?
That's tough, because this town is so hard, and they have their little, if you have a number one at radio, you've made it, basically. But it was always get a publishing deal, get a record deal. The record deal part took me 15 years. I don't know, owning a bus and my Sprinter and having a band that works all the time. So every now and again when I'm like up against the Nashville standards, I'm like, shit, I haven't made it. But then I look at like when I travel to other towns and how people react and the ticket sales, and going back to Montana, everybody just thinks of like this giant rock star. But then I get back in Nashville and it's like, well, you haven't had a number one and blah, blah. And then you meet guys that have had number ones that get forgot about the next day. They can't even have a career because they live and die on radio. So I'm very grateful and fortunate to have gotten to where I've gotten. But yeah, it's weird. It's weird to define that amongst this, Nashville thing of success, how they measure success.
It is interesting, though. Your music's very true to you and your experiences and stuff. And some of the people that I know that have had number ones, it feels like they wrote the song to be number one, or wrote what they thought was going to be a popular song. And your stuff is catchy as all hell. And you obviously know my favorite song is River Kids, but I think Stronger Than You is phenomenal as well. Those are it seem authentic to you, and then it's like you put them out there, and it's either you're gonna like it or not, but it's you.
Right. Yeah, so that's been a thing. I've always had to like write true to myself, and there's been a couple times I've recorded with some big hit producers that did some stuff, and I'm just like, I don't want to make music I wouldn't listen to. I don't feel like that's being fair to me, my fan base, followers. It's a longer road for guys that kind of live in that country rock world, and you've got to kind of get creative and figure it out on your own and build a touring.
Tim, when you're writing your music, are there points, like whether that's like lyrically or musically, like first of all, is there a one before the other in that scenario? And then in that process of writing a song, are there points for you where like when something kind of comes together or whatever that it'll give you chills, or you that
yeah, for sure. Yeah, because a buddy of mine years ago told me it takes 100 songs to get a good one. Now that's a big number. I've tried, but I've gotten better at it, at my craft as I've gone, and I've written with some of the biggest writers in the world, and I learn a lot. And I love getting my ass kicked in the room, and that's the real thing. Like you get in there with some big boys, and you'll see how fast they are, and you're like, wow. David Lee Murphy, perfect example. He's written, he was a huge artist himself. With Dust on the Bottle was his song.
Yeah.
Then he goes on to write all the Kenny Chesney hits and all these outside hits. And every time I write with him, he just kind of sits back and he's like, man, what if you said this? And I'm like, Jesus Christ, where'd you get that idea from? Just learning that process. But yeah, call it Music City measles. You get them goosebumps when you hear a good one.
Tim, there was a couple times where I tried to get a hold of you and you were like out writing. Like, do you have specific times you're going to go write and you can't be bothered and stuff?
Yeah. So when I lock in the room, like with another, like today, for instance, I wrote with Steve Cropper. And Steve wrote a little song called Sitting on the Dock of the Bay with Otis Redding.
Never heard of it.
He wrote Knock on Wood. He wrote I'm Gonna Wait Till the Midnight Hour. Wrote some of the most iconic Stax Records hits. And his first hit was a song called Green Onions. He was
the instrumental?
Yeah, Booker T and the MGs.
I love that song.
They put on the new Addams Family cartoon, so I love hearing his music getting reused, for my kids to enjoy. Yeah. But I wrote with him today, and I just walk into his monster castle, and I'm just have to walk, through the Grammy room, and then, there's boxing gloves on the wall that say, from the greatest fighter in the world to the greatest writer in the world, Muhammad Ali.
Wow.
Just play sign for him. So wrote with him today. He's 80 years old, still gets around great, love him to death. And then he was in one of my favorite movies, The Blues Brothers. He was the guitar player, Steve the Colonel Cropper. So, so we're in there writing. Then it's kind of phones off type deal, text only. You don't want to be like, oh, excuse me, what was that, Mom? you know, when you're in
Yeah.
the creative process. But we wrote really quick today. We wrote a cool song called Gypsy Soul. It's pretty neat. I'll read you a lyric from it. You guys want to hear it?
Yeah.
That's all we want to do.
You may never get me, just an old-time country hippie. Ain't got $1 million, but my heart's still made of gold. Call me what you want to. You'll never go through what I've gone through, and yeah, that's why you'll never ever tame this gypsy soul.
Wow.
Do you like you kind of switching up your musical style right now on this next album from the stuff? I mean, I heard the whole album, but it's got more of a foot in rock. It still has your country rock feel, but it does have a more of a foot in rock. Is that conscious,
Yeah.
or am I misreading that?
Yeah, we wanted to hit rock a little harder.
I will say that was one of the things I was most surprised because I never grew up listening to country music and rarely would kind of go down that path until Rick started telling me about you. You know, like when he started working with you and all that kind of stuff, and Rick would send me stuff, and then fell in love with a couple of tracks, Stronger Than You, you know, River Kids, like he's talking about, that I loved. But going back before we went to see you in concert not very long ago.
Great seats, by the way.
Oh yeah, thanks
Welcome.
for those.
Did your nose bleed up there?
It is hard. I will say this, and my thing is I never ask for anything. It is hard to watch you during sound check, sitting up there, and then having to watch the concert way back there. It's hard.
Yeah. You should ask for tickets. Didn't you buy your own
No.
tickets? I told you to ask
I did. I'm not going to ask you for tickets.
for them. Rookie move.
I got other favors I'm going to ask you for later.
Oh, Jesus. They better be foot fetish, sexual.
They are. I'm starting a new website.
Only feet.
So what I was really taken back by was like listening to some of your albums leading up to going to the show. There were some that, you know, Cars on Blocks, things that felt very, very country to me, that then when we got to the show, you were very clearly playing stuff way more rock. Like your show was super fun, interactive, but very like, you know, very rock feel, which I was super like pleasantly surprised by, just in the sense that you killed it. Like everybody there was having a great time with everything that you were doing, you know, that was going on with that. I was like, this is great. So it sounds like the album's going that direction. I approve, because I had a great time at that concert and everything felt very rock.
Yeah, I think it's the most me thing I've done, because I can't perform a song that doesn't make me want to headbang or rock out. And just growing up listening to music, Nirvana, and God, some of these country guys I go see live that A, have a track machine, and B, have no movement on stage. I'm just like, why am I here? Like the karaoke guy down the street could do that.
Yeah.
So I just have a whole thing of like leaving it all on the stage. I like to leave the stage completely covered in sweat and wore out. And I'm always like, where's my hat? Because I headbanged it off on song 1 and I can't find it.
Tim, couple things. Your guitar, is that like, I've never seen a guitar like that.
I just got another one. You want to see it? My new custom one I'm going to debut?
Yeah.
Gonna debut it right here. We making news?
Yep. This one has never been played live. It showed up. It's a one-of-a-kind Fender. It's exactly the same as the white one with the American flag. Like the headstock style is a little different than most, but I had them do it black with camouflage.
Oh, that's cool.
Ooh.
That is cool.
Custom from Fender.
Yes.
Hell yeah! I just want to fucking
Do you name your guitars?
Not really.
Talk to me about your kids. Do they love what you do, or are they just like, whatever?
My daughter actually went out with us on tour for the first time this weekend, and we had a really great bonding experience. And the first gig we did, it was funny. It was that private show at Kobe Calais, so we had a gorgeous beach front hotel in Daytona, super high end, all that, driver service, and a black Sprinter van, tinted windows, all that deal, right? And then the next one we did was a biker bar on the way home. That was our green room was just a table with like food and bugs everywhere. And my daughter's like, oh my God. And then at the merch table, some drunk lady kept telling my daughter that I was married previously to other women and all this stuff. And my daughter was arguing with her. And I'm like, welcome to the biker world. A lot of mess going around.
She got the full experience then, the full breadth of all of it.
Yeah, she got to see both sides. But I think, if you talk to my boys, you say, what does daddy do for a living? They say, he's a rock star. And you talk to Savannah, she's kind of the least impressed with that. And then I'm like, someday you're going to think it's cool that Billy Gibbons has picked you up from school like 30 times in your life.
Yeah.
And you'll think that's cool. And then she went to New York City with us when we did Fox and Friends, me and Billy. And then we got to go to Madison Square Gardens and watch Billy Gibbons play with Billy Joel. And she knew every Billy Joel song. So she's starting to okay, Dad's pretty cool.
But does she realize that like your friend list and your Rolodex include like Josh Brolin, who is Thanos? Like, does she understand, or that you've been in movies and your friend with Thomas Jane and stuff?
It's pretty hard to impress her unless you're Harry Styles or Taylor Swift. She doesn't really care.
All right, fair enough.
She's coming around a little bit, but she's in that weird teenage thing where someone told me, yeah, your daughter will be a daddy's girl until they turn like 13 to like 17. They shut it off. And she didn't shut it off per se, but there's definitely like less interest in what I'm doing and more interest in what she's doing. And of course she knows everything, so I keep telling her to write a book before she forgets it all.
We'll leave you with this. Tell us your best time on stage and worst time on stage.
Best time on stage, probably the time I did the Ryman Auditorium. It was my first show with ZZ Top, and I got to do it at the Ryman. And when I found out, I was like crying. Billy called me. He's like, "Why don't you open for ZZ Top?" I'm like, "Where?" He's like, "Ryman." I'm like, "The Mother Church of Country." Holy shit! So.
Did you play at the Grand Ole Opry? Didn't you play with?
Yeah, it wasn't an official Opry event, but we played the Grand Ole Opry with ZZ Top. Billy's like backdoored me into these places where these people won't invite me to play, but Billy Gibbons will bring me up to play, even if I'm not on the guest list. He's like, nope, Tim's coming with me. So he's kind of been the father figure in my life for about the last 10 years. God, I talked to him twice, 3 times, sometimes more a day. So, but yeah, I think the best gigs would be like the Ryman with him. Obviously, the Late Show with David Letterman was wild beyond my wildest dreams. Did it with Tina Fey and Frank Caliendo, and that was wild playing the Ed Sullivan Theater. And playing my hometown too. That's always when everybody comes out. That's where I really get my gas tank filled up, is when I go back to Montana.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's more than me, right? It's like these people are like excited for them, that I'm from there, that I'm one of them that is like doing it, and seeing that I inspire these kids and these people to kind of chase their dreams, and sometimes against all odds, Worst gig. I'm trying to think about it. There was one where I got really fucked up and walked off the stage in Aspen and went and fell asleep in the refrigerator. And don't do that anymore. I learned the lesson the hard way. School of Hard Knocks. No blackie outie on stagey. No. And then there was one in Savannah, Georgia, where I got a little stomach issue and I ran off the stage, blew up a toilet mid-set. The band was like, guys, it's about to happen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
do you ever forget lyrics on stage or anything?
All the time.
Really?
Yeah, that happened at the private gig in Daytona for Mostly Stone that I sing every night, and it's because I was thinking about, I knew I had in 2 songs a duet with Colby Calais, and it's the first time we've ever performed live together. So in my mind, I was thinking of working hard, hardly working, got that. I'm like, is that the line? And all of a sudden, the verse to Mostly Stone starts, and I'm like, some people chasing that almighty dollar. I literally did that. I just mumbled it because I'm like, I was singing the other song in my brain while I'm trying to sing the song that I'm currently singing. Yeah, I forget lyrics a lot. And that's why when people like, hey, will you sing this cover song with us? I'm like, yeah, buddy, I don't know the words to some of my own songs. I sure as hell am not going to figure out the words to whatever song it is. I'm just never been really good at remembering song lyrics. I have to like really study to get it. And even when I get it, I'll daydream. I'm ADD and I'm daydreaming about the next song, and I fuck up the current song.
All right, Tim.
Yeah.
We got to let you go. I could sit here and talk for hours.
I know. I could tell you 7 more hours of stories, and I wouldn't get to them all.
I think there's going to be a round 2 at some point. For sure.
For sure.
Yeah. Because I definitely heard a few stories last time we hung out that we definitely need to revisit.
Yeah, and I started telling them, and I drum up more stories. I'm like, oh, what about that rental car? Oh, what about that rental car? I got a rental car today, and it's probably not a good idea to tell the rental car people this, but my favorite joke, I'm like, hey, what's the difference between a rental car and a Black Hawk helicopter? And this girl's like, what? And I'm like, helicopters don't fly upside down. And then she's like, and I'm sitting there. I can actually fly this thing upside down.
Just wait.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, man. Thank you for
Tim
taking the time.
Montana, you're the best.
You rock.
This is the cool thing about like us now. Like we could appreciate. I don't know that we could appreciate half the stuff we've done in our 20s, but now like looking back on it, we've done some cool shit, and we've kind of surrounded ourselves with cool people. Like there's people that like obviously we could have gone and seen a concert and hung out backstage, but it's not as fun. You know, it's like with Tim. Tim is such a host, and he's such a good time. You know, and it's that style too. Like he's such a rock and roller. Like when we went out to dinner with him beforehand, literally bouncing from table to table to either meet with fans, either meet with business people, or come and tell us stories. And it's just one of those things that like, God, he's just such a cool dude.
Yeah,
Such
I was
going
to touch on that same thing too. That was one of the other things that was like very impressive to me. Like, you know, Tim was talking about like the hardest working man in, you know, in Nashville, or the business, or, you know, whatever, in country, whichever term he used there. Like, you know, when we were going to meet up, like you had some back and forth with him that was just utterly annoying as shit, in terms of like you were trying to figure out like when are you going to get into town, what, you know, when can we like meet up, when can we hang out, like whatever the whole thing, and like you'd like try and like nail him down or make some plans.
And by the way, I would only try to nail him down because it makes you nervous. Like that's part of my life nowadays. Is just like hit me up when you're in town, and if I don't hear from him, it's because he's not in town, or else he's got something else going on.
Yeah, it's not. So it doesn't make me nervous. It's just I like to schedule my time. I like to plan my time frame. I like to know
I get it.
Whatever the whole thing. Yeah. So, but it's not like I can't, like I'm unable to function if I don't have it. But it's the same thing.
But many a times you're like, I don't know how you do this.
Sure.
And it's because, like, dude, I'm on their schedule, number one.
Right.
Like, I'm on Tim's schedule.
Yeah, you're way better at going with the flow. No question. I would much rather have, like, something planned or organized or whatever the case is. So, and yes, you end up doing a lot more of that in your life at this point than I do. And mine's the opposite. My stuff's fucking scheduled all throughout the day, right? Like, you like try and, like, you know, nail him down, like what's gonna happen, what, you know, what time, when do you think you're getting here, and he'd write back something like, we're gonna rock and roll, and you're like, what is that? What does that mean? And his response is like, first we rock and then we roll.
Then we roll. Yeah,
like,
that's right.
God damn it! Like, so this is like I just want to know what my day looks like, because I want to like be able to eat some food and like know what I'm gonna, you know, do this, the whole thing. I was just like, oh, that's so useless. Anyway, I was very annoyed with him, like just being like, oh, he's like a fucking tickle rock star, you know, no respect for other people, doing his own thing. He's like too big for his britches. But then we meet him, and he was super cool. And then when we went to dinner, I was like, it was so obvious, like how he's pulled in 10 directions simultaneously and trying his best to accommodate every person that's there and what they're there for whatever that reason may be.
He's got that same thing. He's got the same thing that Pitbull had that drew us to him when we were seeing him backstage and stuff. When you're with him, you're with him.
Yeah.
You know, and he's engaged until he can't, to like the last second. Remember, I had to go pull him because his managers were like, hey, he's got to eat before he goes on stage. So I literally had to go and pull him from hanging out with fans and stuff because he wants to talk with everyone. Yeah. He's so cool like that. Dude, we didn't get into his sponsor. Dude, he's a Traeger influencer. Traeger's one of the biggest companies right now. Yeah. And he's an influencer for them. We didn't get into him getting into a fist fight with Dave Grohl in a 5-star restaurant in New York. We didn't get into any of that. Yeah. We didn't get into the whole...
It's going to be for the next one. We're going to do it.
I know, man.
We should make a note, write it down, make sure we hit on some of that stuff.
Dude, and the thing is like, when we were talking, I think it was a couple days ago, we're like, all right, should we do any research with Tim? Like, do we want to like write down what we want to talk about? It's like, no. Like, you know, with him, it's wind him up, let him go. All right, let's do an outro.
All right, what's the...
All right, we just have to say goodbye.
Are we done?